Rain poured over the city like a judgment, washing down alleys that smelled of forgotten lives. Beneath a flickering streetlight, two young men huddled under a soaked blanket. Twin brothers, indistinguishable but for a small scar across one's eyebrow. Their names were Malik and Marcus, and to most who passed, they were invisible. To the world, they were just the homeless twins. That night, the storm was merciless. The brothers hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. Their shoes were torn, their fingers numb. They sat on the cold concrete near the back entrance of an upscale restaurant, hoping the kitchen staff might toss out leftovers. But fate had something else planned. As Malik stood to stretch his legs, his foot hit something heavy lying near a drain. He reached down and froze. A black leather wallet. Soaked through but unmistakably expensive. Gold initials embossed on the front, RH. Inside were stacks of crisp $100 bills, platinum credit cards, and a driver's license belonging to Raymond Holt, one of the wealthiest men in the state. A tech billionaire whose name was splashed across magazine covers and business news segments. Malik's heart raced. Just one of those bills could buy a week of food, a motel bed, maybe even clean clothes to start fresh. But Marcus looked at him and said nothing. The unspoken bond between them, honed through hunger, loss, and survival, was stronger than temptation. They both knew what they had to do. So, with trembling hands and empty stomachs, they wrapped the wallet in a plastic bag and made their way across town, searching for the man who had more money than they could dream of. They didn't know that what waited at the other end of this decision would not only change their lives, but also shatter everything Raymond Holt thought he knew about people, wealth, and the world. Malik and Marcus had grown up in South Atlanta, in a small 2-bedroom apartment that used to smell like their mother's sweet cornbread on Sundays. She worked double shifts at a nursing home, and even though they never had much, she raised them to be proud, honest, and kind. Their father had left when they were 8. By the time they turned 16, they were washing cars after school to help pay bills. But when their mother got sick, cancer, the kind insurance doesn't cover, everything fell apart. They sold furniture, took odd jobs, even skipped meals to afford her medication. But in the end, poverty swallowed her whole. She passed away holding both their hands, whispering, "Stay good, no matter how hard it gets." After that, everything blurred. Rent notices, eviction, the landlord's threats. School became impossible when you didn't have a place to sleep. They tried shelters, but they were dangerous. So they stayed together. Two young men with nowhere to go, wandering the city with only each other. They learned to survive. They cleaned windshields at traffic lights, carried bags for strangers, and sometimes just sat quietly, trying to remember what peace used to feel like. The nights were the worst. The noise, the cold, the way people looked through them as if they didn't exist. But even then, Malik would hum their mother's favorite gospel song under his breath, a reminder that goodness wasn't just for those who had something. Raymond Holt, meanwhile, lived in a world far removed from theirs. His company, Holt Technologies, had made him one of the most admired businessmen in the country. People called him a genius, a philanthropist. Yet behind the magazine smiles and sleek suits was a man hollowed out by loneliness. He had everything, money, power, influence, but no one to share it with. His wife had died a decade earlier in a car crash, and since then he had buried himself in work, convinced that success could fill the emptiness. The wallet he dropped that stormy night wasn't just expensive. It contained the last photo he had of his wife, and the only family ring she had ever worn. Losing it was more than an inconvenience. It was like losing her all over again. So when the twins finally reached the tall glass doors of the Holt corporate tower the next morning, soaked, shivering, and ignored by security, it looked like a scene out of two different worlds colliding. But what neither side knew yet was that destiny doesn't care about wealth, status, or the color of your skin. Sometimes it just decides it's time for a lesson. The security guards at Holt Tower were used to seeing all sorts of people: executives, delivery drivers, investors. But when two homeless black men, drenched and exhausted, appeared at the front desk clutching a wallet, the first reaction was suspicion. They weren't allowed past the glass doors. One guard told them to move along, assume it was a scam. Malik tried to explain, showing the ID through glass, but the guards refused. It wasn't until one of them decided to call up to Raymond Holt's assistant, almost as a joke, that things began to shift. The assistant relayed the message hesitantly to her boss, who was sitting in a board meeting. At first, Raymond barely listened. He had lost a wallet the night before, but he'd already planned to cancel his cards. Still, something about the message. 2 young men said they found it and walked here in the rain. Made him pause. He asked for them to be brought up. When Malik and Marcus entered the pristine marble lobby, heads turned. They looked out of place, clothes damp, faces tired, but their eyes carried a quiet dignity. They didn't speak much, just handed over the wallet with both hands. Raymond opened it, half expecting the cash to be gone, but everything was there. Every bill, every card, and most importantly, the photo of his wife. The glass covering it was cracked, but it was there. He looked up, speechless. The assistant stood awkwardly behind him, waiting for his cue. He finally asked, "You found this where?" Malik told him about the storm, the drain, and how they walked across town to return it. His voice was low, respectful, but steady. Raymond's eyes drifted between them and the wallet. He asked if they'd taken anything, and both shook their heads. There was something in their tone, earnest, raw, human, that broke through his usual walls of skepticism. He asked his assistant to bring them some food. They hadn't eaten in 2 days, but they hesitated before accepting. Over sandwiches and coffee, Raymond listened to their story. For the first time in years, he didn't check his phone. He didn't think about meetings or numbers. He just listened. When they mentioned their mother, his throat tightened. Her words about kindness echoed in his head long after they finished. After lunch, Raymond offered them cash, a large amount, but they refused. Marcus said quietly, "We didn't do it for money, sir. Just want to give it back." That moment, simple, pure, and unguarded, hit him harder than anything had in a decade. When they left, Raymond sat alone in his office for hours. The rain had stopped, but something inside him had started pouring instead. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying their faces, their humility, their quiet pride. He thought about how the world must see them, and how wrong that view was. The next morning, he made a decision that would change everything. At dawn, 2 black SUVs pulled up to an old parking lot near the shelter where Malik and Marcus usually stayed. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped out. It was Raymond Holt. The twins were standing near a fire barrel, warming their hands. They looked up, startled, unsure if they were in trouble. Raymond approached with a softness they didn't expect. He handed them a small envelope, but before they could protest, he said, "Just open it." Inside were 2 keys, each attached to a small brass tag engraved with their names and an address. He told them he had purchased 2 studio apartments downtown, fully furnished, paid for a year. He had also arranged jobs at one of his warehouses. Simple work, but honest pay and benefits. The twins stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Malik's voice broke as he tried to speak, but Raymond gently stopped him. He said, "You reminded me that humanity isn't about what you have. It's about who you choose to be when no one's watching." But that wasn't all. Within weeks, Raymond launched a new division of his foundation called the Holt Humanity Project. Its first mission, to create transitional housing and job opportunities for the homeless across Atlanta. He featured Malik and Marcus, not as charity cases, but as ambassadors of integrity. Their faces appeared in magazines. Their story went viral. Interviews flooded in, but they never lost their humility. They continued to volunteer at shelters, often returning at night to bring meals to those still on the streets. Raymond's eyes often welled up during those moments. The image of those twins returning his wallet in the rain haunted him, in the best way. It had cracked open something inside him he thought was long dead. The billionaire who once believed the world revolved around ambition had finally learned that kindness was the only true currency. Months passed. The twins settled into their new lives, working diligently, saving money, and studying part-time through a scholarship Raymond quietly arranged. Malik studied social work. Marcus studied mechanical engineering. They visited their mother's grave on her birthday, laying 2 white roses and whispering that they finally had a home. They told her they had kept their promise. to stay good, no matter how hard it gets. Their story spread far beyond Georgia. It became a symbol of how morality survives, even when the world forgets you. Teachers use it in classrooms. Churches spoke about it during sermons. Online, millions shared a video of Raymond's tearful speech at the foundation's launch event, where he said, "I thought I was saving them, but the truth is they saved me." Underneath the success and the donations that followed, the heart of the story was simple. Two young black men, dismissed by society, had proven that character shines brightest in darkness. Years later, when Raymond passed away peacefully, he left behind a personal letter addressed to Malik and Marcus. In it, he wrote, "You gave me back more than a wallet. You gave me back faith in people. And that's worth more than all the money I ever made." The twins continued his foundation, expanding it to other cities. They spoke often about their mother, her teachings, and that one rainy night that changed everything. They never saw themselves as heroes. To them, they had just done what was right. But to the world, to those who judge without knowing, to those who lost hope in goodness, they were proof that decency still existed. And sometimes, all it takes to remind the world that truth is a small act of honesty on a cold, rainy night.